A cool thing about whitetail habitat management, whitetail deer management, and really working towards that ultimate hunt each year and working on that quality herd and hunt is that really there's something to do every month of the year. And I find that what I'm trying to do is create whitetail content that reflects what I'm doing at that time of the year, what I'm encouraging my clients to do. You know, a lot of them are looking at what do we do as a priority list? What do we start now? When do we start? It's so overwhelming. There's so many things to do. And there's always something that you should be doing. I'm going to look at 12 months out of the year, and we might not go month by month, but we're going to go from season to season. And I'll let you know what I'm doing, what I'm really looking at, what I'm creating content on. And if you follow my videos, if you follow my articles, even my books, you can tell what I'm doing each month and what I think you should be doing, what most people are looking at by the month. And that's again, a great thing about all this, because there's something to do all the time, and it becomes a 365-day adventure of all things whitetail. At least it does for me. Now, I love to fish during the summertime, love to spend time with family or friends, but I'm pretty one-sided. I'm not doing much other type of hunting, elk hunting, bird hunting, rabbit hunting. It's all whitetail for me, and this is how I spend my year. Now, what I really like when you start out in January is a great time for scouting, one of my favorite times for scouting, if it's the end of the season in your state, because I like looking at whitetail sign right at the end of the season, because then I do not get mixed up with what sign was left there during February, March, April maybe, compared to the fall and compared to hunting season. So really, right when the season ends is one of my favorite times to scout. I love summer scouting. I love scouting in season. But when it gets to out of the season and you want to look at fresh sign, there's nothing that can beat that sign that's laid there right at the end of the hunting season, right as soon as the hunting season ends. And that way you don't get it confused with a lot of winter sign, because winter sign does not necessarily reflect where those deer are at during the fall, and certainly the summertime does not reflect at all where those mature bucks are going to be in the fall. So number one time to scout in January. Now, if you're creating hinge cuts, habitat cuttings, timber harvest, travel corridors, great time to do so is starting January, February, and before leaf out in the spring. Once those buds start leafing out, I don't cut during that time. All that energy is shooting to the top of the tree. I like to cut when that energy is down in the roots and down in the root system, either late summer dormancy, which would be August, September, which I'm typically not cutting, but that's not a bad time to cut, or January, February, March, before those buds really start to break out on the trees. So great time for cuttings and habitat work at that time. Now, when we get into the end of the winter months and you get into March and April, and especially May, I'm standing on a water hole here. My favorite time to dig water holes in is when the ground is soft in May. You can capture a lot of spring runoff and rain. So really good time. And then I'm putting that tank down below. You can't even see there's a 110-gallon tank here that's 3 feet by 4 feet by 30-inch deep, because we've dug it down to the ground, below the level of the ground. And that end of April, May time is a perfect time for these water holes. Now, backing up, love to frost seed switchgrass during January, February, March. As long as I can get that seed on the soil and I could take advantage of still some remaining frosts and freezes, along with getting those really heavy rains in April, May, then that's a perfect time to frost seed switchgrass. Also, before spring green up, I'm spraying simazine down as a pre-emergent for switchgrass planting. So really great flow where you have your scouting, creating hinge cuts, simazine, frost seeding switchgrass, even frost seeding clover and bare spots if you're managing clover. And then it gets into your water hole time, and that's a great set right there. Now, if it's legal in your state to put out minerals, then April, May, April especially is a great time to put out minerals. Make sure you put a trail camera on it. Now, when we get into, speaking of trail cameras, we get into June and July, that's my favorite time to start putting out the trail cameras, because after giving them a break since April, turkey season time, I'm pulling them out of the woods, then I'm putting them back in mid to late June, and I like that timing, because that's when I learned to identify what bucks are starting to grow during the summertime. You can start to identify individual bucks a lot of times, especially the older ones, because of their antler characteristics. And the end of June, early July is a great time for mock scrapes. So this mock scrape right here in front of me to my left, we set that up during the middle of summer 2 years ago. We raked it out, actually urinated in it, and haven't touched it since. The deer hit it religiously every year. They hit it starting in June, July. And if we do rake out our scrapes, that's when we do it. June, July, when we're putting our cameras out, raking it, urinate it in it, and let it go. And a lot of times from that time on, whether it's a new scrape or an old scrape, then we're starting to get deer usage at that moment on that scrape within a week or two, and that'll extend all the way through the hunting season. So you can create mock scrapes during the middle of summer. We've been doing it for years. I've actually been doing it since the early 2000s. So a long history of creating mock scrapes, and it works. Again, the best scent is no scent when it comes to these vines right here. It's amazing how many deer will run by. Even in the last couple of weeks, we have does and bucks that are going by and rubbing their glands on those hanging vines and hanging branches when there's snow on the ground. So they still relate to those scrapes all the time. You don't see that with rubs at all. So that's why a mock scrape is such a great feature on your land. Now, when we get into the end of July and August, it is not a fun time to be hanging deer stands, but it's a great time to do so because there's a lot of other steps you can create first. Now, if I'm creating heavy shooting lanes, I have to cut out a lot to get that stand in, make a lot of commotion. I might work on that in May, and a lot of my stands are going up then. But if they're easy stands to put in, to hang in, we don't have a lot of shooting lanes like this one behind me over my shoulder. That was a great summertime setup because we didn't have a lot of shooting lanes. So I'm putting those stands in July and August. Now during those summer months, I love to scout whitetails. So around here in the ag land, driving around, looking in the roads, and I like seeing mature bucks, I like seeing does, I like seeing deer in general, but the whole reason for me scouting those, there's a couple reasons. I want to see that those mature bucks that I'm after that fall are still alive. They're typically not growing up on my lands or the lands I hunt because I create fall parcels, not summer parcels. And so I'm looking within a mile to mile and a half in all directions around here, and I'm identifying individual mature bucks that I know are on the lands that I hunt during the hunting season. And then that's my entire reason. Comfortable, it's fun. We're taking jerky out, a couple pops, take the kids, take the pickups, look out in the evening. It's a fun time. It's a great time to be out looking for deer. But my whole entire reason for going out and doing that is I want to identify those mature bucks. Now another big reason for that, and scouting during the summertime, great reason for scouting during the summertime is that I want to put those ideas and strategies into place when it comes to the weather. I find the same weather patterns that I hunt during the fall take place during the summer. The same weather patterns that get deer on their feet, that make them want to feed, and watching for those major temperature drops. You have the day before it's 87 degrees and hot and windy. You have a front that comes through, a little bit of rain. The next night it's 72 at the same time. 24 hours later, then it was 87 the night before. And that's when I find those deer feeding, and they're coming out to the fields earlier. So the same way I plan to shoot and kill bucks during the fall is the exact same way that I plan to search for them, scout for them during the summertime when I'm looking out in the roads and I'm looking out in the ag fields, and I'm figuring out not only that those bucks survived, but what days are the best based on the weather. You can start practicing that year. That this season I have my latest book, All Season All Weather Whitetails, out, and it's on Amazon, it's on my site, and that's a great way to begin early right now practicing those weather patterns because they do work. I've used them since the early 90s. Almost all my bucks have been shot on high value days. Learn what a high value day is. You can learn in the summertime and then extend that into fall. It's a great way to practice. And so once I get into that tree stand time and I'm finishing that tree stand time, then before the season starts, that month and a half before, I'm really starting to pay attention to those trail cameras. I'm noticing where bucks are at during the summer, why they're not on my land or why they are on my land. And you'll find a lot of similarities to where summer food, big open overstory shade, you have summer bucks. Those bucks leave that during the middle of September to middle of October, and they're actually moving to those fall properties. And I want you guys to have fall properties, which is why I try to teach that in a lot of different ways on my YouTube channel, on my website, and in my books. When I get to about 4 weeks out, so let's say Michigan season's open on October 1st. Then around Labor Day is my drop dead time where I'm staying out of the woods other than planting activities for planting food plots or follow-up fertilization, overseeding with rye. Those activities are okay. You're going in with a machine, I leave the machine running, I get my job done on the food plots and I get out of there. Same goes for Wisconsin. It's third Saturday in September. Let's say it's September 16th, the season's starting. Then I'm staying out of the woods except for planting about mid-August. So I'm letting the property start to settle down. And let's face it, a great whitetail property should not have a lot of mature bucks living on it during the summertime, because most of those bucks are going to a fall property. You have that annual whitetail shift of bucks. And so leaving about a 4-week window before the season starts is perfect, because those bucks really largely shouldn't be on your land yet anyways. They should start coming in mid-September to mid-October. And that's a sign of a great whitetail parcel. So you really can do whatever you want, end of the season till about a month before that season begins. And that's a great time to really start letting your property settle down, and then the bucks come in later, and you'll see that pattern a lot. At that time too, I'm stopping checking trail camera cards randomly every week or two. I'm getting into that mode where, unless it's a storm or a high wind day where I can sneak into a remote trail cam setup off to the side somewhere where I'm not invading on a deer bedding area or a food source, I'm not leaving my scent around, then I'm waiting until the hunting season to actually begin retrieving those cards. And that's what happens when I get into the hunting season. Then I'm taking 2 or 3 cards with me. I'm walking by a trail camera and I'm setting up in that hunting stand, and then I might leave and exit a different way and change another card on another trail camera. So I might change 2 to 3 cards because I'm using those same non-invasive routes to access multiple tree stands in different directions, and I'm changing cards only when I hunt. Now, one of my favorite times, if not the favorite time to scout whitetails, is during the season. And you say, well, you have all these trail cameras. Well, I want to see that the trail cameras match up with the sign. I want to see, for one, if I see a lot of mature buck rubs and scrapes and I'm not getting pictures, it tells me something about my camera. And at the same time, I want to see that sign that it relates to those previous buck patterns that I'd already identified mature individual bucks for, so that when that sign comes up in the same spot, often the same trees for rubs, same perennial scrapes, when I see everything open up, then I know that buck is returned. And I want to see that match with the trail camera, which is why when we have a water hole like this right here, and we have a mock scrape right there, we have a camera right here, and I have a tree stand right there. When I hunt that stand, if it's in the afternoon, evening, I change a card after the sit. If I were to come up here in the morning, and if I was walking by the camera to get to the stand, then I might check out the camera before I even sit there. But most of the time, I'm changing the card after the sit during the season, and then using those scouting, anything that you can notice during the hunting season when those rubs and scrapes are popping up. But it's not just, well, there's some great rubs here, there's some great scrapes. It's how does that relate to knowing that that buck you scouted during the summer is still alive, that buck that you found pictures of in January, February, knew he was still alive and made it. How does that relate to his individual patterns the year before? And a lot of times you can find out to the day when that buck has arrived on your property. During the season, believe it or not, is one of my favorite times to plan for the next year. So when I'm sitting in a stand, I'm looking at, should I be in that tree over there instead of this one? Should I move that water hole? Should I have a water hole up on top of the ridge? Is that a different movement that I can capitalize on from this water hole up there, having one up there? So I'm really starting to lay it all together so that when it circles back into the end of the deer season and I'm going out for scouting, I'm verifying what I think I see and what I think I want my property to look at for the following year. So when I get into January and I'm scouting with a purpose in specific stand locations, there's areas of this property that I haven't even touched since 2014 because it didn't relate to any of the movements that I was looking at. I'm not just walking out in the woods to walk out in the woods, which is a lot of times why I'm not finding a lot of sheds on my own property. For one, they're gone usually during the winter to somewhere else. And again, I'm creating a fall hunting season property. But two, when I'm in the woods, I'm walking with a purpose. Even when we're out here shooting videos, I want to come into specific locations. I'll tell Dylan, hey, let's go up to this point that we haven't been into, and I want to see the rubs, see if that big split brow buck was in that location this fall, and just you're trying to put those pieces together, but I'm doing it in specific locations. I'm not just wandering around the woods. And so I'm really planning in December, when I'm sitting on my stands in November and October. So when I hit into January, I'm scouting with a purpose. I can create hinge cuts, travel quarters where I need them to go. I can harvest timber where it needs to be harvested within a plan. And then I'm rolling into, if I need to frost seed switchgrass, chemical applications, water holes, trail cameras, and mock scrapes go hand in hand for me. Early tree stand maintenance, if you have a lot to cut down, a lot of installation where you're making a big mess in May. If not, I'm putting those tree stands in and around August. I'm planting my fall plots. I left that out, but it's a given. I'm putting my food plots in every year. I'm creating all my plantings roughly August 1st to August 15th, unless I'm putting corn in early. That's rolling into the hunting season where I'm leaving my land alone for about a month prior. 6 weeks prior, I'm really checking up those trail cameras, seeing where those deer are. I have my summer scouting. I'm trying to verify with that scouting. I'm trying to practice my all-weather whitetails approach to actually following the weather. Getting into hunting season, I'm changing trail cameras. I'm in-season scouting, which is either my first or second period of the year to scout. We're going to talk about that in another video. And then again, the whole cycle switches back over again. And January is a great time for stand maintenance to get your stands down, check your harnesses and your lifelines, make sure you get that out of the woods at that time. It's a 12-month cycle, guys, which is a lot of fun. There's so much to be done, and that's a good thing. And if you want to really up your game, there's something that you can be doing for whitetails every single month. It might only be a few hours every other week, a few hours once a month, but you can get a lot done over a 12-month period. And again, it really improves your connection with the land. It can also improve your connection with whitetails and really lead to a lot of success. You should be always analyzing what you're doing on your land. It doesn't matter if it's on private or public land. We're analyzing the hunt, analyzing your approach, analyzing where the deer at that time of the year. Don't always take it for face value that they're here during the summer, they're going to be back during the summer in this location. That's not the way it works. Mature bucks move the most. Does and fawns if they're here today, they're here to stay. You're always doing something within the 12-month cycle. That's the great thing about whitetails. It's something we can easily partake in. We can involve our kids, our friends, and it really is a 365-day approach. Bottom line, it's a lot of fun, and that fun leads to work, and it's amazing how hard work and fun equal a lot of success, especially if you look at it as a year-round, 365-day whitetail approach.